So let's take a look at the trending year over year. In addition to seeing year-to-date comparisons to plan, it's often interesting to compare year-over-year comparisons. See whether or not there's certain seasonality that you can always see in terms of your data. So let's take a look at some of the information. At the top we have basically our year-to-date numbers, similar to what's on our year-to-date trend. The revenue section contains revenue for each month so far in terms of the current fiscal year compared to the previous fiscal year and what the numbers happen to be. And likewise for the cumulative revenue, I have the cumulative revenue compared to the previous fiscal year. So I can look at these numbers and see the overall comparison and how well it's doing. I also see the revenue versus the previous year in terms of quarterly numbers. So although month to month gives you a feel for it, this gives you a feel for the overall differences that I'm seeing and how well you are doing or not in terms of quarterly comparisons previous year to the current year. I also see average revenue per client. We looked at that before where we also got a distribution comparison, but this is showing the current year. And again, I don't have revenue for October, November, December, but you can see the gap and the difference in the average revenue. We've clearly gone up market in terms of clients. I also see recurring revenue as percentage of total. And what I see is I see an overall percentage, and then I see a comparison. I see 1 month where we're dipped below the previous year. Revenue by contract type is really a side-by-side comparison where I see the revenue by contract type in the previous year where I had 65% coming over the course of the year from recurring service versus the current year where 84% is coming in. So I get that kind of side-by-side comparison or distribution. See the difference between what was coming in terms of fixed price versus the current year. Gross margin is also showing me the same kind of comparison, and what I'm seeing is I'm seeing the gross margin, the revenue minus the cost of goods sold, and what I'm getting to keep as comparison to the previous year. So you're kind of seeing as I've always been a net positive. In the previous year I had a couple net negative months. It looks in terms of it that January, February, and April are always kind of not the best months in terms of the business. I also see the cumulative kind of comparison and how we're doing year to date. Also showing gross margin on a quarterly basis to take out some of the month-to-month fluctuations. Average gross margin per client, kind of showing me how well we're doing. And then a margin of a comparison by contract type. Again, I was getting 70% of my margin in the previous year from recurring service. Now there's 95%, and kind of giving me that data. One of the things that some people wonder is, what if I've just recently started with Autotask? One of the things that you can do in terms of it is you have a financial previous tab, which is going to show you all the data that's coming in and being calculated and you're using for these things like your revenue, your total revenue numbers. And these are calculated from your data. If you weren't using Autotask, these will all be calculating out to zero. You can, if these were zero, and you wanted to associate revenue, we put in these green sections which allow you to manually enter in information. I would suggest that you could manually put in your current, what was your revenue in the previous year in the green section, what was your cost of goods, what was your operating expense, and what will happen is that will be used to represent your data for the previous year. So I wouldn't overwrite any of the data because you really didn't have the Autotask, but we give you these sections to put additional information that may not be stored for Autotask, both for the current fiscal year and the previous fiscal year. So you can put in that data in any of the green sections, because sometimes Autotask won't have all of the revenue or all of the operating expenses or all of the costs, and that's an easy way to have them appear. So that's a summary of the year-over-year comparisons. Thank you very much.